Greetings friends, you are watching Ruslan Belov's channel. Today we will take a detailed look at the situation in Ukraine as of January 8, 2026. Let us begin with international news. Today, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, announced that in 2027, the US plans to increase its military spending to $1.5 trillion. This is an absolute record for the American military budget in history, and such figures are undoubtedly a serious signal and clearly point to something significant. Now let us move directly to Ukraine, from where a large amount of important and high-profile information is coming in. Perhaps one of the key developments of recent days has been a series of publications in Western media outlets devoted to the Ukrainian issue. According to a number of reports and analytical articles, Western press sources are discussing either the possibility of, or already ongoing behind-the-scenes negotiations between the United States, the European Union, and Ukraine. The essence of these discussions, if the sources are to be believed, may revolve around security guarantees for Ukraine in exchange for certain concessions related to Greenland. Put in very simple terms, this would mean the possible inclusion of Greenland into the zone of strategic influence of the United States, while Washington, in return, could provide real and formalized security guarantees for the part of Ukraine that is currently under Kiev's control and that you see on your screens. Such a deal looks extremely interesting from the standpoint of American interests. However, it cannot be ruled out that all of this is merely rumors, assumptions, and journalistic speculation without a solid factual basis. Meanwhile, we return to the situation inside Ukraine itself, where events are developing extremely rapidly. One of the main pieces of news concerns weather conditions. According to forecasts, in the coming days, air temperatures across a large part of the country may drop to -30 degrees Celsius. Similar figures are also expected around January 15th, that is, effectively in about a week. Until then, temperatures are expected to continue steadily and consistently declining. We are addressing this topic for a reason. Over the past 24 hours, a large number of reports have been published stating that the Russian side carried out massive strikes on Kryvyi Rih and across the entire Dnipropetrovsk region. According to incoming information, the main targets of these attacks were energy infrastructure facilities. Moreover, reports today indicate that electricity, water supply, and hot water are currently completely absent in many areas of the Dnipropetrovsk region. In fact, a significant part of the region that you see on the map is in a state of total blackout. Power supply problems are also being recorded in Kyiv, with reports of electricity outages coming from there as well. At present, temperatures in the region remain in the range of -4 to -6 degrees Celsius. But everyone clearly understands what this could lead to if the cold intensifies to -30 degrees and Ukrainian services fail to restore electricity and heating. Under such conditions, the risk of a complete failure of critical infrastructure, above all heating systems, rises sharply. We will continue to closely monitor how the situation develops. In addition, monitoring channels and analysts report that a new wave of strikes by the Russian Federation is expected in the near future, involving hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles. According to available information, these strikes could be carried out literally just a few days, or even a couple of days, before the onset of the most severe frosts. Footage arriving today from Kryvyi Rih clearly demonstrates strikes against critical infrastructure facilities. Videos are also being published from the Dnipropetrovsk region, showing explosions on the horizon and once again reporting hits on key infrastructure targets. A separate, extensive report has also been prepared on the city of Dnipro itself. Numerous explosions, sharp voltage fluctuations, and, overall, an extremely tense situation approaching a critical level. Now let us move directly to the front line and begin with the Zaporizhzhia direction. The Christmas holidays have ended, and the Russian side is gradually returning to the pace of offensive operations and the intensity of combat that we observed throughout 2025. Already on the first day after the holidays, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, as well as pro-Russian sources, reported that units of the East Group of forces were able to significantly improve their positions in the area of the settlement of Bratska. Just yesterday, on January 7, 2026, the map looked different. However, based on fresh reports from the Russian Ministry of Defense and the East Group itself, the front line was adjusted, According to these data, Russian units managed to reach the railway line connecting the settlements of Pokrovsk and Zaliznikne Huliai Pole. This railway is one of the key elements of the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine. At present, it appears that the Haicha River is now far behind Russian assault units, and the main task has become reaching the railway line itself and securing positions along it. At the same time, the settlement of Ternavate is effectively finding itself in a semi-encirclement, and possibly within forming pincers. In the near future, the intensity of combat in this area is likely to increase further. There are also reports of Russian units beginning to advance toward Volny, although it is most likely that the primary objective is not the settlement itself, but once again the railway line that divides these directions. The practice of the current conflict shows that railways provide favorable conditions, both for organizing defense and for advancing along the front line. That is why, at this stage, the priority for Russian forces is not so much the bridgehead along the Haicha River as control over the railway line running further to the west and northwest. Next, we move to the Dnipropetrovsk direction, specifically the area around the settlement of Novopavlivka. Here, it appears that a certain turning point has occurred. Over the past several days, we have been regularly observing map adjustments in favor of Russian forces. While on January 4, 2026, the front line looked different. Since that moment, changes have been occurring almost daily. As of today, Novopavlivka is almost completely covered from the south and southeast, and in the near future it is likely to be covered from the east as well. The so-called pocket in the fields between the settlements of Novopavlivka, Horikov, and Kotlyarivka has effectively been eliminated. According to pro-Russian sources, from these positions, the Russian army may begin advancing further north, with the aim of breaking the overall defensive line between the butterfly-shaped strongpoint and the settlement of Novopavlivka itself. The task, apparently, is to level the front line along the Muravka-Novopavlivka axis, after which a broader advance to the northwest toward Medjeve, Vesele, Oleksandrivka, and other settlements may follow. This concerns the T064 highway as well as the Pokrovsk-Dnipropetrovsk region railway line. Now we move to the Pokrovsk sector of the front, more precisely the Dobropilya direction. Over the past few days, almost no new information has been coming from this area. Most likely, a regrouping of forces is underway here, along with the continued advance of Russian units through the so-called grey zone within the city of Pokrovsk. Almost daily, video materials appear showing how individual groups of Ukrainian reconnaissance and sabotage units enter the city, while Russian forces consistently move from one pocket of resistance to another. It is clear that a significant amount of work still lies ahead here, so it is unlikely that we should expect a large-scale offensive toward Dobropilya in the near future. The situation is developing in a relatively gradual manner without sharp or sudden changes. And finally, the Kostantynivka direction. Today, Ukrainian sources published video footage of FPV drone strikes against positions of Russian units in the area of the Shanghai Pond. These recordings show a series of attacks on Russian strongpoints in this sector. The strikes were carried out precisely in this area. Based on these objective control materials, another map adjustment was made. As a result, we can see the difference in the situation between January 7 and January 8, 2026, reflecting the current changes along the line of contact. Next, we move to the Siversk sector of the front line, although it would be more accurate to refer to it as the Sloviansk direction. Changes have also been recorded here today. We can observe that Russian units managed to eliminate a small salient between Siversk, Platonivka, and Reznikivka. These are the exact changes now reflected on the map. In essence, a significant portion of the area that was previously marked as a grey zone has been adjusted in favor of red. This indicates that Russian forces continue to push their offensive westward. At the moment, the main combat engagements are unfolding in the area of the settlement of Reznikivka. This sector is characterized by a high concentration of strongpoints and fortified positions, as well as difficult terrain that complicates movement. Russian units are methodically conducting assault operations, gradually advancing and creating conditions for further movement toward the next settlements, Kriva Luka and Kaliniki. We now move to the Kupiansk direction, from where an especially large amount of important and illustrative material is coming in today. Let me remind you that several days ago we made a rather unusual yet fundamentally important adjustment. Back on January 4, 2026, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation officially announced that the settlement of Podoli had come under the control of Russian units. This information was published at the official level, and we made the corresponding changes on the map at that time. However, we immediately pointed out that many questions remained unanswered. In particular, it was not entirely clear how exactly the advance had been carried out in this area, and whether the entire territory of Podoli was under control, or only parts of it. Today, on January 8, 2026, the situation in this sector has become noticeably clearer. The so-called fog of war over the Kupiansk direction has begun to dissipate. Based on new objective control footage published by the Russian side, a deeper and more detailed adjustment was made. The video materials show the Kupiansk sector of the front, specifically its eastern part, the eastern bank of the Oskil River and the settlement of Podoli. We see a drone flying over presumed Russian positions, as well as footage in which Russian servicemen raise the Russian national flags over several buildings. Within a single video, at least 2 such episodes were recorded. One flag was raised in one part of the settlement, and another flag was raised in a different part. Based on this objective control data, the previously uncertain zone, which had been partially marked in grey, is now, with sufficient grounds, being repainted in red. This indicates that serious and purposeful advances did indeed take place in this area. At the same time, it must be noted that within Kupiansk and the Kupiansk district as a whole, the situation remains extremely complex and fragmented. The line of contact here has a mosaic character. Opposing positions may be located on the same street and sometimes even in neighboring buildings. For this reason, the overall picture on the Kupiansk direction cannot yet be considered 100% clear and definitive, and the map in this area will temporarily remain somewhat chaotic. There are also reports that the Ukrainian side has completed the construction of a second line of defense on the Kupiansk direction, although geographically this is already closer to the Kharkiv sector of the front. This defensive line is located just a few kilometers west of the Oskil River. Its main purpose is to slow down and contain the advance of Russian units in the event that the Russian army moves toward the Pokrovsk reservoir, as well as further in the direction of Kharkiv. It is precisely in this area that a new defensive line has been established, behind which active combat operations may begin in the near future. In addition, there are reports that the Russian army has deployed heavy flamethrower systems, the Teos Sontsepiok, to the northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region. Apparently, this sector should also be expected to see an increase in the intensity of combat operations. The main concept here may involve bypassing existing fortified areas and strongpoints in order to reach the Pokrovsk reservoir from the northeast. Next, we move to the Sumy sector of the front, from where new adjustments are also being reported. High activity by units of the armed forces of the Russian Federation is observed in this direction as well. The transition to more large-scale offensive actions here occurred at the end of December and the beginning of January 2026. Over the past few days, the map has changed noticeably. According to both pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian cartographic sources, Russian units have come right up to the second line of defense of the city of Sumy. This includes the areas around the settlements of Kotin, Pisarivka, Malakachkarivka, Kachkarivka, Novosich, Marino, and others. In the near future, combat operations are likely to begin for the adjacent forested areas, and possibly for the settlements themselves that form part of this defensive zone. That is all for today, dear friends. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for watching the channel. Subscribe, support the video with your likes, and all the best to you.